Hello. There have been a lot of Games Workshop products set in and around 40k over the years. I have made a good number of short 60-second videos about a fair few of them. But if you've not seen those on Instagram or TikTok or here on the YouTube Shorts feed, do not worry, because this is an anthology of 10 such short histories. So let's explore just a few of the curios and unusual items from the history of 40k. This is a rogue trader Eldari. No, Eldar. Wait, it's a space elf. Designed by legendary Citadel sculptor Jez Goodwin, the Space Elves were released in 1988 and were initially sold at a price of £2.50 for 4 of the RT-04 range of metal models. The first Space Elf was in fact released before Rogue Trader itself, with Bob Naismith's Dark Elf Space Trooper, but it was Goodwin's elves who captured the mesh body suit and conical helmet design that would become closely associated with the later Eldar miniature range. In the Rogue Trader rulebook, these Eldar Space Elves were described as one of the most ancient races in the galaxy, who as often turned to piracy as they did to a life of mercenary combat. Whether you love Xenos or not, it's clear to see that these cone-headed space elves have been an important feature of Rogue Trader and 40k since the very beginning. This is the Battle for Armageddon, a token-based wargame released by Games Workshop in 1992. Designed by Jervis Johnson as the first of the short-lived wargame series, the game tells the story of an enormous orc invasion of Hive-world Armageddon that lasted the better part of 2 decades. The campaign was inspired by the German invasion of Russia in 1941, with the orcs taking the place of the Germans and the Imperium standing in for the Russians. Gameplay makes use of hundreds of cardboard tokens that represent everything from planetary defences to Imperial Guard regiments, Space Marines, and Orc and Gretchen hordes. In 1993, 2 more wargame series releases would hit shelves, The Doom of the Eldar and Horus Heresy, and there would even be a bonus fight across Horus's battle barge using the same mechanics via a free game included in White Dwarf 161. The wargame series managed to capture the sweeping narrative of the greatest events in 40k history using just cardboard and imagination. Incredible. This is a rogue trader, an exploring, raiding, fighting warrior of the Imperium that acts with a degree of autonomy that's rarely offered to the Emperor's agents. The original edition of Warhammer 40,000 shared the name of the rogue traders, and they feature in the Age of the Imperium bestiary. 40k humans then were a little less instantly xenophobic and murderous than they are now, and the rogue traders would judge new alien races for their usefulness or threat to the Imperium. In 2001, the skirmish game Inquisitor introduced some new dedicated 54mm rogue trader models. And then in 2018, they finally made it to the 40k tabletop too, with the release of the Kill Team Rogue Trader box. There has even been a book series written by Andy Hoare about one such plucky rogue trader on the edge of Tau space. The rogue traders may operate in isolation from the Imperium, but they are no less deadly, and twice as cool. This is Abominable Intellect, a card expansion for Blackstone Fortress, named for the Scourge of the Imperium, AI. According to the heretical journal of Keeper Cripias, an extract of which can be found in the 3rd edition 40k rulebook, in the 20th millennium, the Gold Men of the First Age created the Stone Men, who would go on to inherit the stars. The Stone Men created another race to aid them, the Men of Iron, and together they pursued millennia of exploration, expansion, and technological evolution through what would become known as the Dark Age of Technology. For reasons unknown, this era would come to an abrupt and violent end, as the Men of Stone and Men of Iron went to war with one another, the destruction heralding the Age of Strife. In Cripias's words, the Men of Iron possess no soul, an anathema to any true man. In the end, despite their strength, the Men of Iron were wiped out, and even those who remained loyal perished. Though occasionally, in the far reaches of the galaxy, in places such as the Blackstone Fortress of the Segmentum Pacificus, you might yet find a living man of iron. The Adeptus Mechanicus have dubbed these thinking machines abominable intelligence, and they work tirelessly to make sure that this dangerous technology never threatens the Imperium of Man again. This is a Necromundant Ogryn, a hulking warrior released in 2020. The first appearance of Ogryns in 40k came in 1989 with the Ogryn Champion sculpted by Jez Goodwin. The Ogryns were counterparts to the Warhammer Fantasy Ogres, and several of Jez Goodwin's Ogre range were re-advertised alongside the new Ogryn miniatures that would follow. Bob Ollie sculpted Ogryns recruited from medieval worlds into Imperial service, and then in the 90s there would be a completely new range of Ogryns produced by Michael Perry. Whilst other early abhumans like Minotaurs and Imperial Beastmen were lost, the Ogryns have survived to present-day 40k, and the Slave Ogryn gang from Necromunda marks just one of the more recent interpretations of these massive brutes, with Bulgryns and Nurgle Plague Ogryns making their mark as well. Much like their fantasy ogre cousins, the Ogryn makes for a characterful addition to the lore and the battlefield. Just make sure you don't get in their way. This is the dreaded Amble, one of the most dangerous predators in the 40k universe. The first appearance of this fiendish foe actually came in the form of the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Umber Hulk, produced in the 80s by Citadel and sculpted by Nick Bibby. In the original 40k Rogue Trader book, the Umber Hulk was rechristened the Amble, retaining its description as a burrowing monstrosity, but receiving a new miniature sculpted by Michael Perry that was perfect for this new sci-fi wargame. The Amble didn't abandon its fantasy roots though, featuring in a White Dwarf scenario for Warhammer Fantasy roleplay the following year. You could still spy the Amble in 40k 3rd edition, but it was Blackstone Fortress that returned the fearsome fiend to the tabletop once again. This brutal beast is one of my favourite creatures in the 41st millennium, just as long as it's not wandering around Manhattan wearing an Edgar suit. This is a Space Marine Terminator from the 4th edition of Space Hulk. The first Terminator Marine was designed by Jez Goodwin and advertised in 1988, but it wouldn't be until the following year that any lore for these heavily armoured individuals would be available. In White Dwarf 109, a new Terminator sculpt by Bob Naismith was advertised alongside lore explaining the use of these nearly indestructible warriors in confined close-quarter combat. The following month, a third Terminator was introduced alongside the now iconic foe, a Gene Stealer. April 1989 saw the release of the Terminator Squad box, RTB-09, with gorgeous box art by John Blanche. It included 8 metal Terminators in the now famous Tactical Dreadnought armor design, sculpted by Jez Goodwin. The classic Space Marine Terminator had arrived, and soon it would take centre stage in one of the greatest Games Workshop games ever made. And if you want to know the origins of Space Hulk, then check out my YouTube channel, Jordan Sorcery. 40k Rogue Trader's only regiment of renown were the Harlequins, a troupe of Eldar fighters and entertainers who existed beyond conventional social structures. The original box of Harlequins featured 18 exquisite miniatures, sculpted by the maestro of mini mayhem, Jez Goodwin. The set included troopers, avatars, warlocks, death jesters, and the ever-enigmatic Solitaire. Initially coded as RTB-06, as it was the 6th box released for Rogue Trader, its cover featured unforgettable art by David Gallagher. Metal Harlequin miniatures would later be released in blister packs to expand the range, and White Dwarf issues 105 and 106 detailed the background, hierarchy, and army list for these unusual Eldar warriors. Together, it set the stage for an iconic unit that would become one of the most exciting parts of 40k history. This is the Libra Xenologist, a 40k background book written by a rogue trader. Released by the Black Library in 2021, the book was authored by Darius Hinks, but presented as if Janus Drake, the rogue trader hero from Blackstone Fortress, had collected his thoughts and doodles about the denizens of the Eldritch space station in a handy guide for other explorers in the 41st millennium. The book is almost a spiritual successor to Black Library's earlier illustrated background book, Xenology, which took a similar approach and included beautiful yet horrifying illustrations of the races encountered by the Imperium in the 40k universe. But whether it's denizens of the Death World or horrors of the Slump, this book makes for compelling, immersive reading. To my mind, one of the greatest projects undertaken by the Black Library was to broaden and deepen the Warhammer worlds beyond the tabletop, and that's exactly what this book does. This is a facsimile edition of the 1987 original game Warhammer 40,000 Rogue Trader. Written by Rick Priestley with a cover by the inimitable John Sibbick, the first edition of 40k established the 41st millennium as a place of grim darkness and eternal war, populated with sci-fi equivalents of fantasy races like the Space Orcs, Space Elves, and Space Dwarves, alongside the monolithic, nightmarishly brutal Imperium of Man. You'll find the roots of modern 40k lore, but things like Gene Stealers and even Space Marines are quite different. The game was launched with huge fanfare in White Dwarf issue 93, and over the course of the next 6 years would develop and evolve through White Dwarf articles, collected supplements, and all kinds of amazing innovations. The world, the writing, the art, and the gaming of Rogue Trader ensured that this would become a timeless and iconic addition to the wargaming hobby, one that would change everything forever.